Welcome to Zen Footsteps. My podcast is designed to invite you to explore new perspectives and challenge the way you see the world. Through engaging conversations with thought-provoking guests, we're going to delve into the idea that you can transform your thinking and inspire personal growth. From redefining success to uncovering unconventional paths to fulfillment, each episode is a step towards expanding your mind and embracing the journey of discovery. So join us as we walk alongside innovators, thinkers, and change makers who can help you see life in a whole new light. So I've got another great guest on. Actually, this is somebody who I've admired from afar for a long time. We parallel each other in so many ways. And this is Charlie Goldsmith. Now, Charlie Goldsmith discovered his healing gift at 18 and has since dedicated his life to bridging energy medicine and modern medicine. His first scientific study at NYU in 2013, published in 2015, showed significant improvement in patients' conditions and pain levels. He was also featured in Elle magazine in 2015 and TLC's The Healer 2017. Now, Charlie's work gained public attention despite skepticism, and he's now based in the USA, and he collaborates with leading institutions to advance the research and to integrate his methods into the medical system. He's continuing his mission throughout his life to bring live events, teachings, and ongoing studies. Charlie, welcome to Zen Footsteps.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
This is like for me meeting somebody that you're actually speaking to, and I've really admired you. So your personal journey, you said you discovered your abilities at a young age. Can we go back to that? What was your initial reaction?
It was mixed. So it all happened quite quickly. So I didn't know that people could heal people. I didn't know that this was a thing. And then I started feeling energy between my hands, which I also didn't know was a thing. I understand now that's a phenomena that, many people are capable of in terms of feeling energy, or, Tai Chi would call it chi or whatever. So I didn't know any of these things. It really wasn't my, my upbringing. And so I started feeling energy, and in the moment where I first started feeling the energy, I actually thought that there was something wrong with me. I was like, uh-oh, my brain's not good. And I felt in the first moment, I felt very uncomfortable in that not that the energy made me feel uncomfortable, that I thought something was wrong with me. I was like, oh, it's finally happened. My mind is gone. So then after that, it turned out other people could feel this phenomena coming out of me. So that this is within a few minutes, that felt very good because it wasn't just me experiencing this thing. So now I didn't think I was losing my mind anymore. And then within a few minutes after that, I accidentally healed someone with it. So I didn't know that it did anything. I was just feeling this magnetism. And one of the people that sort of had come up to feel this energy coming out of me at the time, I didn't know, but they had had arthritis in their hand, and the arthritis went from that interaction. I didn't, and so once that happened, I then sort of, I guess, felt uncomfortable again, because I went from like, I'm feeling this weird thing, other people can feel it, to, oh wow, this very unusual, at least in my world, event has happened. And that was the first 20 minutes or so of my experience. And I was 18 at the time. And, after that, I just could consistently affect people's, health pretty broadly. I mean, pain I'm known for in terms of, getting very fast changes in people's pain states, but it's much more broad than that. And really from that first day, I was just able to consistently, meaningfully help people at a similar rate to the study you mentioned that I did at, I was 33, I think at the time, but I'd been already healing for 15 years and, sort of probably helping 7, 8, 9 out of 10 people with a range of issues. So yeah, that was the beginning. I have cut a longer story a tiny bit shorter in that what that first 20 minutes was like. But I would say um, it was for me, it was a pretty, it was a pretty earth-shaking kind of thing psychologically to go through when I wasn't seeking it. You know, I think had I been seeking it and done courses and done the workshops and all the things, perhaps that might have felt different. But I was a bit blindsided by that. Oh, humans can heal people. Okay, oh, I can do it. Interesting. And and then from there, I really tried to normalize my life as much as I can. As a young person, you kind of want to feel normal, and this was making it difficult. And so I would sort of seek to find people who could do the same, um, you know, and that was probably hard for me because everywhere I went, I was really quite far above the people I would find, not necessarily in knowledge because I didn't really understand much about it, but in effect, I was very, really helping people in ways that, are still today, quite rare to see. As I'm sure you would know, it's not like you can look up someone on Google or wherever and easily find really super effective healers. So, um, yeah, I would say that I didn't enjoy it initially in terms of that experience. And also because what happens is you're having this experience, which is challenging, but everyone around you is also having an experience because they're seeing it for the first time and they've got their own preconceptions about what's possible and what isn't, what's good and what's bad. And so I was having my own experience, and then I was having to weather the experience that was understandable for others to have, but as a young person, when you're going through something like I was, having people have their own, positive experience, but also the negative, there was plenty of that.
So how did your friends and family react? Because I know that we grew up in conventional families. We have certain sort of concepts of what we should be, what we should do, whether we're men or women. And then suddenly we come along and we have this gift, and it's quite a shock. I mean, did you second doubt yourself at all?
I didn't, I mean, I just looked at what was happening in front of me and accepted I mean, it's not like I'm hearing about it. I was witnessing it. So I wasn't really doubting what I was seeing. I was just seeing what I was seeing. That was quite obvious. So I was quite accepting of, oh, this is possible and it's good. It's helping people. I've never been able to fault the ability. It's great. But the response around me was a mix of positivity, definitely, and heavy negativity because it does challenge people. There's I can't pretend to know all the reasons, but historically, I think these abilities have challenged people going back a very long way. There's kind of well documented cases of very famous healers that were murdered for their, for existing. So, that history, the history of this sort of medicine is, very dark. From what it doesn't read well, that's for sure. And there's been no good time to do this work. I'll put it that way. So I experienced the modern version of that, of people thinking you're crazy or delusional or crazy or a fraud, or just yesterday someone was calling me a fraud on my social media. And so I've never, I wouldn't have many days where I'm not getting a lot of positivity and negativity as well. And that was like that from the start. But the difference is I'm 44 years old now. I've been doing it for 26 or so years, 26 years. And so I've got the experience and the thick skin and the self-confidence and the ability to process emotion and all the things that that you need to be able to do that. Whereas as an 18-year-old, I didn't have that. I didn't, on one hand, I knew this was important. On the other hand, I'm having to weather things that I didn't necessarily or didn't have the skills at that time to deal with, because who does? It's not like we're
No,
trained
agreed.
to deal with that. So yeah, it's interesting. I always sort of look back at myself and I'm amazed I kept going, but I that's what I
It's
chose
a
to
hard
do.
one. I mean, it's I love that expression, when the student is ready, the master will appear. And I think that the master for me is the master within yourself. And we're challenged in society because I come across doctors who you do something, and the cognitive dissonance they have, it just blows their mind because they're so trained to think in a particular way. And I think at the end of the day, you've just got to be who you are, right? As a healer, because I presume you didn't grow up with knowing about toric fields and chi
I still
energy and
don't.
chakras, anything like that.
I still don't actually. It's not
Yeah.
really my, I've never read a book or done any study on this area ever. I still to this day haven't. And so a lot of the sort of general terms and the way people understand these things are not sort of within my periphery. I just know how to help people, and I do it in my own way. And I'm not saying those things are right or wrong. It's just not in that. I don't need to know that to do my work. And I found my experience with doctors has been pretty good, to be honest. Getting the opportunities with doctors very hard, but once you do get to and they see your work, doctors have been largely very supportive, because at the end of the day, doctors and their job typically is to assess and then offer hopefully intervention that can help their patients, and this sort of work actually sits in the intervention space of one thing to offer, pain medication or energy healing or and there's other comparisons. I've found doctors that don't know me have been the one. I've never worked with a doctor that's come out and criticized me publicly ever, or privately, to my knowledge. Whereas when I have had criticism from doctors, I don't know them. They've never watched me work. I've never worked on a patient of theirs. There's been none of that. And all they're doing is, echoing the the beliefs of others. It's just this passed down the chain belief system that's not based on their own evidence. So I don't hold that against them at this point, because we do that in many other areas as humans
Do you think
anyway.
do you think there's a commonality in all healers? I mean, I can say this of myself. I've yet to come across a healer. There's a commonality where they've childhood has been pretty tough. It's almost like this. I don't know. I want to say like an early opening, an initiation. It's almost like the soul can take it, and I don't know if that's the case with you. Was that the case with you?
It was definitely a bit traumatic. I don't know. It's interesting. I do think that the advantage to having adversity, whether that be physical illness or emotional challenges, is, when you grow and learn to overcome these, you become stronger and more capable of more. Um, I think empathy is hard to have without difficult experience. If someone's in a swimming pool and it's cold, and I've never been in a cold swimming pool, it's hard for me to understand what they're experiencing. So I think that in some ways, uh, you know, someone who hasn't had tough experiences could be excused for not understanding
Sure.
them. But whether that's the absolute necessity, whether you could even say that anyone avoids, you know, tough things to deal with, I don't know. I think the human experience is pretty tough, even, whether we have whether we perceive people to have a tougher one or not, that's, from the inside is a different thing. So I don't know, like interestingly, someone once said in criticism of me to a friend of mine, I don't believe he can heal people because he wouldn't have had enough childhood trauma. And I was like, I was told this, and I said, well, I mean, he does, and this was an interesting take because he doesn't know my level of childhood trauma or not, but regardless, I also can help people pretty well. So it was an interesting take. I'd be, some of these things I think. Um, I do think that one of the advantages to having to tame your trauma and heal it is it gives you capability to stand up when perhaps other people wouldn't. And I think, like in my case, what I'm trying to do and I'm doing is I put myself in difficult situations that are high risk in terms of, like, when I have been on the news or done a TV show, or when I walk into a hospital and my success or failure could really make or break my career, because as soon as one study says he can't do this, it's game over for me in terms of my goals. I do think that the difficult parts of my life gave me the capability to do these things without fear. And I do think that was an advantage, but of course I don't know that because I haven't had a different experience. But I think, if I hadn't sort of been to my own inner hell at points and back, then perhaps those things would feel difficult. But for me, they do not. In no way am I ever worried about failing, because it's not that I can't fail, it's that I'm not afraid to. And I think that suffering at points gives you the capacity to know that you can handle it. You'll be okay,
Totally. I mean, I love the Buddhist inability to accept change as the cause of all unhappiness, and I think that I look at sometimes with people, they try to almost out-trauma themselves. I listen to somebody who, I don't know, maybe they didn't get a pony as a kid or something, and they really really get upset. But I think I've saw my first dead body when I was 6 years old. I grew up in a country where everything's trying to eat you and kill you. I had a father who was in the Secret Service. Absent father in my life. But all of those things I found made me stronger. And as a healer, I can empathize when somebody comes in. I have, like you said, you swim in a swimming pool and you know what it's like. And I think as a healer, that empathy is very important because it means you speak from the heart and you speak truth as opposed to reading a book. And I'm really pleased in the sense you've said you haven't read all those books, because one could then go, well, you've been preloaded or front loaded because you're just speaking jargonese, you know what I mean? And I mean, I've noticed that when you go on shows and things like that, the biggest thing, I mean, I've watched quite a few of your videos, and time again, you can see the look on these people's faces is that what they're seeing is factual, but it's like something goes on in their head. Their brain gets scrambled because they can't understand it. And how do you work with people like that do you feel you need to convince them, or do you just say the facts speak for themselves?
In terms of the patient or the people, the
The,
witnesses.
not so much the patient, because the patients often, I think, are more willing to accept it because they're experiencing it, and
Mhm.
they've probably come to you at the end of the line when they've tried everything and just been told take another pill, take another pill. More the people. There was a lady, you went on a show and you could see she said something to the effect of, "My heart says one thing and my head says another thing." And I think that's, do you come across that a lot? And do you just accept that they've got to catch up with you in terms of, look, there's the evidence?
Look, I think yes. I mean, I'm not going to verbally convince someone. That's not the way I go about my work. I believe very strongly in the demonstration and giving people the opportunity to form a view based on that demonstration. I have found, I've been multiple times worked in general hospitals or demonstrated within those environments. And I found once even the biggest skeptic sees enough, they get there. And so, just like I had the opportunity to experience this sort of thing, as I mentioned earlier, through my own discovery of it, and have the opportunity to form a view based on what I saw in front of my eyes. It definitely took me multiple, cases for me to establish, okay, this is consistent, this is whatever it is. So I think that everyone deserves that opportunity to be able to form a view based on, witnessing, real events. And I think that the problem at the moment, of course, is that there's not a lot of events to witness. That makes it difficult. But I think that everyone deserves that chance. Just seeing one case is reasonably not enough for someone who needs to see more. I have no problem with that. I think that that's actually intelligent. I've seen firsthand how powerful the placebo effect is. It's very powerful. You can get, you can get and do get dramatic outcomes from outright placebo. And so I think it's reasonable for the skeptic to need to see enough to recognize that this is perhaps beyond the placebo. Equally, I'd like people who are very open to this space to need to see enough to establish the same, that they're not just, seeing a little and then there's such low-hanging fruit that they decide this is the real thing, because, again, ultimately the truth is what's important, and that often is sitting in the middle. So I equally want the skeptic scientist to see enough to form a view, just like I want the believer to see enough to also form a view. I think I think both sides can be a bit extreme sometimes. A big part of my work, actually, which is what I'm currently doing, is to create a platform to test healers for genuine ability. So, that doesn't have the potential of a bias, so people can establish, effective healer from, someone who is not trading sort of better than the placebo. And even though there's nothing wrong with placebo, the problem is if you have a whole lot of healers out there that are not doing much better than the placebo, and even though the people that are getting the benefit from the placebo, that's wonderful for them, there is that argument of, well, why does it matter? But the reason it does matter is because if the difference between a healer that is ineffective above the placebo versus someone who is night and day. So would we rather a world where we can find the people who are well above? I would argue absolutely. But right now that's a needle in a haystack, because there's no testing, there's no, people can get certificates and then that's kind of it. You're a Reiki master, or you're a healing touch, whatever they get called them, and others. And so that's a big part of my work, is to go, well, this phenomena is very real and it's very good. I would like patients to be able to, or potential patients to be able to easily find people that are, having these big effects in a really safe, trustworthy way. And I think that will go a long way also to doctors being able to prescribe these things, because even if a doctor's open to it and says, I saw Charlie on TV, or I saw something else that has made me think that my patient might benefit, today, even the open-minded doctor would have a lot of trouble being able to effectively prescribe energy medicine, because it's just too hard to find it. So that's probably one of the key parts of my my long-term goals, is to create to really bridge that issue of, for every million healers, or if there's a million, what percentage of them are actually very good at it? And how do we make sure that those ones are the ones getting the patient versus the ones that, it doesn't mean it's not even about whether they're bad or good people. It's just about whether, like, if my child is sick, with a pain condition that would suit an energy healer. I definitely want the I want the best of the best, you know. So yeah, so that project is well underway to be finished this year, where
I'd be
people.
interested in that because one of the things I found is that um, a lot of true healers, two things. Sometimes you never hear about them because they're worried about the judgment. I mean, in the UK, we still have that um, karmic history of people being burnt at the stake. I mean, I live in an area where the last highwayman was hung, and last three people burnt at the stake. That energy is still around, even that you can't even use the word healer unless you're a doctor. It's been just, oh, you have to be a doctor to be a healer. And I think like you, I would like to see these genuine people. And I suppose the biggest challenge is that when you go to work and you work in a bank or in a car factory or something like that, you expect to get an exchange, a payment. And I don't have a problem with people healing and having a payment for it. And that's the other things I'm sure you've come across is that the first thing they're going to go is, well, how much you charging, you know?
Totally. So that is part of what we're creating is it's an opportunity for people to test their ability anonymously so they don't have to face any kind of public embarrassment should they find out that they don't have the ability that they hope to have. So they won't be, no one will know. So that it's very anonymous, which is great. If they do have the ability, they'll be able to also practice anonymously. And it will be monetized fairly, but and so people, you know, that have the ability will be able to get paid what I think is appropriately. And the system maintains that these people have to always stay at a certain level of effectiveness ongoing. So it's going to solve some of these problems, I think. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter what medicine says. It doesn't matter what anyone says. You've got, like in America, where I sit today, there's 50 or 60 million people in chronic pain. What matters is what they think.
I
That's what
agree.
matters. You know, what matters is that you know, energy medicine, when it's very good, is a solution that they should all be trying. But the problem is, if those 50 or 60 million people try to find healers, the odds of them finding a good one very low. That's the first problem. Then the second problem is that they all did try to look for them. Of course, there's not enough supply because you know, we don't even know how many people, there's 7 billion people in the world, how many people actually have this ability versus how many people know they have the ability. There's going to be a very large gap. So, you know, I wish to see a world where those 50 million, and if it's 50 million in America, you know, that means that's what, 10 or 15% of America nearly. So if you think about that in the world, that means there's 800, 900 million people in chronic pain. It's a big number that are not being well serviced by the current interventions that exist. You know, some of them are highly addictive, unfortunately, and then cause other problems. But at the end of the day, we know that those people it's not helping. And energy medicine, I think, is a wonderful opportunity for those people, for a very high percentage of them, if there were enough practitioners that they could get to that they knew were good. And of course, as you mentioned, the practitioners need to financially be able to survive this as a career. So this is my life's work, is to
Mm.
solve this problem, and I'm going to have a really good go at it, you know, for sure. So
Do
because
you
I
think
did,
it's a gift, or do you think it's something you can teach?
I think I think that it's both. So I think that it, like all ability, there's going to be a percentage of the community that has the capability. I don't know what that percentage is. I'll tell you in a year, I think. But I feel like the problem is, you know, what percentage of people are good singers, right? It's one in a something. I don't know. But let's say it's one in 1,000 or one in 100 or whatever. I'm not one of them, but let's say it's one, it's a number, it's a per capita number. Well, the reason that we know who can sing is because from a very young age at school, we sing. And then we go, wow, that girl can sing, can't she? And then next thing, private lessons, scholarships, record deals, concerts. The same goes for sport, for maths, for science, for, and then there's careers that sort of, utilize parts of the education system in order for talent to bubble to the surface. Doctor, lawyer, marketing person who was good at art, but also good
Mm.
at English. So, what we don't know in this area, because there is no talent pool, there's people who accidentally find it or decide to seek it because they if they feel to, or they see an ad or whatever happens. But there's no talent search. And so what we have is a world, 7 billion people. I think I don't know if this is accurate, but there's a million Reiki practitioners. So that would be, what would that be like? Um, 70, how many thousand? There's like 70,000 million people in
Yeah.
the world. Is that right? So that would be one in 70,000.
Yeah, I
I
think it's
think.
like nine billion people, isn't there, in the world? So that we've
Yeah. So I don't know if I'm getting the maths right. I think that would
yeah,
make it one in 90,000, I
yeah.
think. So I could be getting that wrong. But so based on that, then that's how many people have gone and got a certificate
Mm.
because they had a feeling they could be good at it. Now we know that not all of them will actually be good at it, but the question is, of the remaining, 89,999 people, how many of them have the capability? And we don't know this.
No,
So
agree, especially with Reiki. It's just I just kind of it's like somebody says I'm a Reiki master. I mean, just
it
that, and
doesn't mean
it
it
doesn't
doesn't
mean
mean
it doesn't mean anything
it
to
would
me.
mean something to the person who was good at it, and
Sure.
I think so. If I had studied Reiki as a 16-year-old, I would have been very good at it. And of course, then what would happen is people would say he's amazing at Reiki. But the truth is, I didn't need the Reiki. The Reiki is just one method of that someone has decided to teach with. But that doesn't mean that the method is the reason that they're good at it. It means that they have the underlying ability, and the method is the one that they've chosen to use. So coming back to, is it a gift or can it be taught? It is, I believe, a percentage of the community are capable, and they can be taught. But that there's a full stop after that. So I
Mm.
don't think that the people who do not have ability can be taught, just like there are certain people who are going to run the 100 meters in under 10 seconds. That's only fractional. And there's even only a certain people that will run it in under 12, so we no matter how hard they try, they just don't have the physiology for um,
I agree. I mean, if I sing, cats run out the room. I sound like a banshee when I sing. I know I can't sing, but I know what my gifts are, and and I'm happy with that. And I think that sometimes you can try to force something, and it just doesn't happen. So, is the idea then to create some sort of test? Like we've all got gifts. Like some people can look at someone and see through the body X-rays. Somebody can. I mean, one thing that happens with me is if I put my hands on someone, I've got to be very careful because I can feel their pain, and that sometimes is quite destructive. I don't like that bit of it. But I've never had anybody teach me how to. People get into the whole kind of, oh, you got to protect yourself, but I think that's fear in itself. If you start getting into ritual of fear and protecting, so is there going to be some kind of test that you guys are going to come up with and you go, right, let's find out what this particular gift is and how do we test
No,
it?
I'm not. I am at least at this point specifically working within the my particular range of human capabilities. So I'm not looking at, there's obviously lots of other um, phenomena that is, sort of perhaps not understood in the human capability. My focus is pretty solely my form of healing. And you never know, maybe that will lead to testing in other areas, but mostly my aim is to find others who are, who do energy healing in much more. They don't have to do it my way, but they need to have results that are sort of in the same sort of, plus or minus some percent. Plus would be great. Minus still probably good. And that's what I'm looking for. So we'll be testing. We'll basically have a very easy, fast way for them to test for effectiveness, or not. And then opportunities that stem from that. So opportunities for meaningful employment, that is important, because otherwise, if you don't get paid to do the work you're doing, how do you survive? It's
Sure.
very difficult. So that's my aim. And, perhaps then once we're going, if we sort of go, okay, well, can we test medical intuitives? That's not what I am. Can we test, all the different other areas? Perhaps, but that's not my focus. To be honest, when I think about it, because I haven't thought about it, but you did ask, I would probably leave that to the people who know that area. I don't know that area. I know how I work. I've seen it from, through my eyes for many, many years. So and that's very personal to me, because I want to support the people who can do this. I want people to be able to access people that can do this. I have a very big aversion, I have, it looks from the outside like my big battle is against medicine, but it's not. Medicine is actually, the body that will ultimately be the pathway to credibility for this sort of work. And I'm working right now with a very big university. I'm being studied by a very big university here in America, but it's a blinded study, so I can't say the name of it right now. And I'm just a few months off. We're just going through approval processes to work with a huge US government body that, should everything fall into line, will be huge for this area. And so I'm very grateful. I've been able to do demonstrations at these places. The university study has begun. It's all funded. It's all happening, which is great. Very hard to get to do these things. Even if you get an institution interested, getting the funding, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in some cases. So that's wonderful. But one of my battles, or if I call it a battle, or one of my areas that I think is very important to address, is the unregulated spiritual community. As you said, the Reiki certificates of the ineffective, the broken teaching the broken. It's a real passion of mine that this as an industry, because it is an industry. And like all industries, when you add money, money unfortunately corrupts. And money has people, like when I actually saw you on TikTok, I think, which is, I'm not a frequent user of TikTok, but I think you messaged me there and I did see it. And when I open TikTok and see the content on there from the healing industry, I am like, whoa, this is terrible. It's frighteningly, not all of it, but some of what I see is, I think, very unfortunate, in terms of, I think it's, I think it's a lot of bullshit.
I
And
agree. I agree. There's so many people out there that I see that are, you flick through and it's someone a tarot this and telling people this and telling
yeah,
people
and
that,
you're
and I
watching,
just think that that's just it's kind of circus stuff, right? And I feel
well,
like we've come a lot further than that. We deserve and to honor ourselves a little bit better than
I thought we had until I opened TikTok. I think
that.
that there is more and more interest in this area. There's hospitals that are inviting Reiki in. There's, like I said, I'm being studied by some, great institutions. There's, I even, had the TV show and went on the news and showed, real healing. And then I opened TikTok and there's some person saying, you've arrived at this video because you were meant to, and I'm going to take away all your trauma. And I watch it, it makes me feel a bit sad for this
Mm.
space, because firstly, you don't take away people's trauma, you integrate it and process it. So the languaging, broadly speaking, is, you know, if you're watching this, you're going to now manifest money, or you're like, all these things are, for me, are heartbreaking for our industry, because it's taking people away from the truth. And the truth is that there are a percentage, I don't know what the percentage is, of people who genuinely have a real ability to meaningfully help people. And these people, unfortunately, you know, sit in this space where we get a lot of mud thrown, but the people out there, you know, pushing concepts that are false, are actually creating the justification for continued mud. And it breaks my heart, because I really want to find the genuine gifted people and support them, and hopefully my work will help bring credibility. And I'm not just saying my work, there's other people also doing great work to bring credibility. I can only speak from my own point of view, but yeah, when I see that, I'm just like, wow, this is actually going backwards. Because, as an example, if I'm trying to win over doctors in order to hopefully have one day where healers are in every hospital, I'm not just talking about Reiki healers, I'm talking about actually gifted healers. But then you open, you know, social media, and you've got this ungoverned, you know, I uh, just really false part of this world. You know, people who dress up and look, they look the part, you know, but what they're teaching is incorrect. And the problem is, I guess, not only do the people who matter see this and go, this whole area is bullshit, but also what it does is there are people who are broken, who are desperate for help, and they see these things, and it, I think, leads them down the wrong path. And what I would prefer is people to be able to easily find truly talented practitioners in this space without all the stuff in the way. These people who are like, oh, I'm going to do a Reiki course, and next thing they're on TikTok pretending to have ability that you can tell they don't have. I'm not saying none, but there are examples that spring to mind that I look at, and I'm like, this is not good for our field.
I think it drives a lot of true healers underground. My father, like I said to you earlier, he was in the Secret Service. He was like your original Fox Mulder, I suppose. And my father had this thing where basically he had this light in the center of his forehead. And when you say that, as I say it, and I say to people, I'm thinking what they're thinking is, this guy's completely lost the plot. You know, I'm doing that imposter syndrome already before I start. And my father actually gave up in the end, even trying to convince people, even trying to show it to him and talk about it, because he got so much negativity about it, which is such a shame. Because he could have gone, like, if you look at people like Tyler Henry, who was properly examined, you know, they put probes on his head, they look at his brain waves. I think that's what we need as well. And the problem slightly with regulation is that we saw the chiropractic profession, for example, before 1995, and it believed in innate body intelligence, the body's ability to heal itself. Once they started bringing in regulation, it got away from the original healing and the chiropractic treatment. So for me, I always think that there'd need to be something that we don't dilute what you do, for example, because if we start saying, no, no, you have to do it like this, these are the rules, that would be my only fear, and it would drive the true healers like you and others away.
Well, I wouldn't, yeah. The way I would do it would be more to, ultimately, people work in different ways, but the consistency needs to be in how we treat patients, privacy, bedside manner. You know, there needs to be consistency in the ethics for healers. You know, people shouldn't be promising, over promising, and under delivering. It should be absolutely the other way around. You know, they shouldn't be making claims or blaming patients when patients don't get the outcome that's desired. You know, there is no ethics broadly in energy medicine that should be there, just like there is in other modalities, and probably there needs to be a very specific one for energy medicine. But I wouldn't ever want to, what I would like to see is that done, like that. If you want to be a practitioner, you have to study the ethics. It wouldn't even take long, but you have to study it. You have to adhere to it. You have to be insured, so that they would be good, important things.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't be really stepping on the areas where you're not educated. That's a real big problem in this space, that you might have one talent and then you're telling people to go off medication or doing these things, which, you could certainly suggest someone may want to revisit their doctor to talk, but we can't be doing that. That's a big problem as well. All I want to see is that if you're out there touting you have a talent, that should be independently observed and either agreed with or not. And I think that's reasonable. I mean, that no one should fear being tested, something they can do.
Agree.
Like, to be honest, when I get tested, I'm so excited because I'm not like, oh, I'm getting tested. What if I can't? I can. So that's why I do the things I do. People think that's the hard bit. The hard bit is not the tests. The hard bit is getting to do them at the moment, right? So it's so interesting in this world where people don't want to believe this stuff, that getting tested is hard, but so that's what I'm creating again, specifically in my area, is that you can get tested now. I don't mind how someone gets a result as long as it's safe. That's fine with me, of course. Like, if someone has a different method to me, that, of course, that's fine. Like, I just have mine that I've sort of fumbled my way through for my career. But I do want people to have results. So I'd like to see a world where, if someone is saying, I heal people, that's okay. If you can, that, like, perfect. And I would really like to see that. I think it's very important, actually. And to do that, we need very accessible testing, and probably, like you mentioned earlier, appropriate testing for the different kinds of abilities, because that's a problem beyond my current scope of work, is the range at which people have ability. But I would like to see that, because it breaks my heart that so many people could benefit from this medicine if only they could find someone to help them with it.
I agree, and I think it's good to bridge it. I mean, again, with my background, because I came from like a nursing background, chiropractic background, nutrition, hypnosis, I quite like working with people who do have healing abilities, because then I know the anatomy of what's going on, and I like working with that, because I don't have all the answers. It's a toolbox, right? And if I'm stuck or something, I'd like to go and see Charlie, because you can't heal everything. And in the UK, I don't know what it's like in the States, but functional medicine is really taking off here. A lot of the doctors have become quite, I think, quite disillusional about just the pharmaceutical approach, and are starting to integrate it. And things are now being called complementary as opposed to alternative. I mean, acupuncture, for example, is very well used by doctors over here. Do you find it's the same in America? Is there a resistance there, or is it more of an acceptance?
I think it's just a bit of both. I mean, I think Americans as a culture are fairly open compared to Australia, for sure. I mean, we've obviously come out of England, and the pessimism has, it also arrived on the first ships. But I feel like, whereas America, they love difference. They celebrate it. They celebrate ability. They don't have tall poppy syndrome like we do in Australia, which we inherited. And so it's noticeably different, I think. But of course, it's such a big country that niches are also very big, So I think that anything that's even small is big here, because it's so large. And so that's a big difference, that I still think that this is sort of a niche area, but it's just so big because America is so big. But I think the problem is that the niche in this space is still a mess. It's a absolute mess, and that's the problem, that I think functional doctors would pretty much all be open to this area, should they be able to experience it, and B, prescribe it in a trustworthy way, which you couldn't now. There's no way on earth um, if you're a doctor and you're like, I want to prescribe this to you, I think that the odds of finding someone good, certainly you wouldn't look on TikTok. And if you do the hashtag of energy medicine, you're in big trouble. Yeah, it's not pretty. And so that's the problem, is that I do think there's an openness. I think doctors want their patient. I think there'd probably be nothing worse for a doctor than to not have the tools to help their patients, especially the ones in chronic pain.
Mm.
They want the tools. I think if you gave them the tool, they will typically turn a blind eye to their inability to understand it, because they don't want to see their patients suffering. But even the most well-intentioned doctor, I just don't think you're going to easily find a good practitioner now. It's like,
It's hard. We've
I
got
don't
in
know
the
how.
UK, it's 8 minutes, 8 minutes per patient. That's the average time the GP has in
Yeah.
this country. 8 minutes. In 8 minutes, I'd probably spend saying hello, how are you, and what's your name? Within
Mm,
that time. 8 minutes is not
yeah, they
healing. But
don't come along.
who looks after the healers? Because the doctors themselves are burnt out, you know, and a lot of them are going private so they can actually follow their passion. And I always say to people, go easy on these guys, right? Because they got into medicine because they truly believed in helping people, and they still do, and they need our support. But there's a lot of sort of them and us bashing, which I try not to get into, because I have friends in the medical profession, I have friends in the alternative profession, and I think, like you say, I look at you maybe as a kind of, I hope it's fair to say this, but a bridge between the two, which I think we need.
No, that I do feel that, and that's why I mentioned that. I do believe doctors aren't a problem in this area. They are actually part of the solution. The truly the bigger problem is the mess of the spiritual community, and that it is so hard to find the truth amongst the the untrue. And therefore we're not really giving medicine a chance to see it as a credible space. And so that has been my focus, and it's been slow going, but we're getting there. I think in the next couple of years, hopefully that'll be true, totally true. But I do think that people do point at doctors and blame them for their lack of openness in this space. But actually, if they just open their eyes and look at it, I mean, I can tell you this: if I didn't do what I did, and I was interested to look at, like, let's say my daughter had a pain condition, and I was like, I'm interested in this. I'm interested in anything that will help my child. You have to get very lucky to land on something that looks credible in this space. Very lucky. I mean, the odds um, are so low that I could easily, as a well-meaning parent who would do anything for my daughter, open up social media, look at a clip of someone, doing some very strange healing thing on Instagram and or TikTok or wherever, and I'd be like, well, I'm not going to waste my time there. That's crazy. And I think that's fair enough.
Hmm.
But again, look, if you land on the right thing, you might have a different view, but that's actually a much lower percentage at this point than things that I think are clearly true.
Yeah, I think so. I think that I think that part of the problem I'm seeing is that for so long, historically, there was a suppression of healing energy and things like that. You were persecuted for it. I mean, a lot of people, midwives and burnt at the stake and things like that. So suddenly now, where we're getting into environment, maybe for the first time, that people can do these things, it's almost like everybody's putting their hand up and saying, "I've got this, I've got this, I've got this." I think the pendulum, as always, will swing to the extreme and it will come back to the center. And I think the problem is we're sorting the wheat from the chaff right now, and that's the difficulty. And
There is,
how do
we're
you
not,
test?
we're not sorting it. It's
Well, we're
just
not.
out
You're
there.
right.
It's out there running right. We are not sorting it. It's a
Yeah.
mess. And unfortunately, where Western medicine is unable to service people, they look elsewhere, which is fair enough. And medicine cannot help every single person, as we know. and they never will. There's going to be different things, whether it's dietary change, whether it's meditation, whether it's a healer, whether it's, you know, changing your environment, whether it's getting rid of the scented things in your house, or an operation. We have different things that we'll need to go to help us. But there isn't currently, it's the Wild West, the spiritual or energy industry. It's just anyone can do anything and say anything, and there's nothing to govern it,
No, I agree.
which is not good, because what it does is it means that it's very hard to find a true solution. And that's a tragedy, because it's a beautiful space with well-intentioned, capable people in amongst the bullshit, and it's very hard to find them. And that's really sad, because there are people who have conditions that very much suits this space. And that's why I do think it's important that we don't just point at medicine and go, well, you're the ones blocking this. It's like, no, if they open their eyes, it's not pretty. It's a circus. You know, it's getting in some ways better, but unless they start, you know, unless we create fair and reasonable, you know, rules, and again, testing and meaningful careers for people who have this ability. So it's not just in the second bedroom of your house, but you're in a hospital, you're in a sports club, or you work with the GP, or all these things. Until these things happen, it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, and if people want to sort of reach out to you, is the way that we I mean, how do they get hold of you if they want to? I mean, I don't want you bombarded, obviously.
So that's part of that's one of my challenges. Obviously, I'm sure you can imagine I have a lot of people who want my help, and if I wanted, and I wanted to just take bookings, I would be booked out for, you know, for many lifetimes. And whereas my focus is actually more about trying to do the things that will ultimately create more people doing this sort of work that you can find. So then there's not a bottleneck at the people who are very good at it. And so I'm not really bookable. People can apply and write in, and we do choose cases for me to work on. But a lot of my work, you know, I've got many cases to do for the current study I'm doing. I do demonstrations. I've got an event in a few weeks where I do demonstrations, you know, to an audience. It's all about trying to bring to hopefully normalize this medicine and create a demand for it. So my focus at the moment is, you know, we're making this platform to test talent. We're very deep into that process.
Will you
I
be
am doing,
announcing that when that's ready to go?
yeah, we just, it's because it's hoped it would be usable now. We're probably a few months away. So yes, certainly I will be. So I'm doing that. And then, so that's about, I guess if you look at my different streams that I'm working down, one is credibility. So that's doing the studies. Two is demonstration. So that was like the TV show. That's the event I'm doing in a month. So that's so people can see this stuff with their own eyes. Like I mentioned earlier, they need to see this repeatedly in order to accept that it's good. And then what other things am I working on? So we've got credibility, accessibility, are really the two things that I'm trying to do, because I don't want people to have to come to me. I want people to be able to just find someone who's as good as I am, where they can find them and they can trust that that person, you know, has genuine ability and they've been thoroughly vetted, and it's safe.
So would they, I mean, obviously, I mean, they've got to go somewhere to get vetted. There's got to be a standard. There's got to be people who vet them, and that's quite a challenge, isn't it? It's
a big challenge. That's why it's taken me so long to do it. But we're going to be able to do it very well. So it's very thought through. It is you'll see when we sort of bring it out. And if you want, because we'll have the testing phase, we'll bring in people to help us test with it. So we would definitely reach
Yeah.
out to you.
Yeah, definitely do because it's I'm totally agree with you. We need to kind of regulate. So listen, we have a challenge. Well, not a challenge. We have a little kind of thing we do in each show to sort of conclude. We ask you to give us your favorite quote, but I want to know why. What's your favorite quote and why?
At the moment, it is. I'm not. So I just want to preface this, and please don't edit this preface out.
Okay.
That I was not brought up religiously. My dad owned nightclubs. I come from Australia, where we're not like a deeply religious culture. But lately, my favorite quote has been. Let me get the wording right. Hold on a second. Uh, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. So that's obviously a Jay Shetty quote. No, I'm kidding. That is Jesus's dying words, I suppose, wasn't it? So when he was being nailed to the cross, now uh, what I like about that, and what I think is important about that quote, is it's acknowledging that humans are by our nature good, but through events and that lead to trauma can do bad things. And ultimately, what that means is that everyone is forgivable, which is a really important thing that a lot of people don't understand. And it's something that I've sort of spent my life coming to understand, that ultimately forgiveness is for the person who is angry, because we're the ones who suffer the anger that we would need to forgive someone. So recognizing that part of the human condition is we can break, and when we break, we can do bad things. And many times, if not all of them, we don't break through our own hand. It's through our parenting, it's through trauma, it's through war, it's through whatever happens. And then once we break, anything is really possible, from to the worst things. You barely see a documentary about a serial killer that didn't have a terrible childhood. So now, whilst we can't condone killing, that though the outcomes are awful, but to be able to see that the consciousness inside them is also a victim of their own wrongdoing, gives us an opportunity to be able to forgive, and therefore we're not suffering the bad person they turned out to be, because it's bad enough, their act, but to also suffer hatred on top of that means that I've suffered the event, and now I have suffered my hatred of the person. So I've been attacked twice, the first time by them, the second time by me.
Yeah.
And so I find that I think, to be honest, it's one of the most profound things that ever could have been written or said, because we do justify being angry at people. Of course I'm angry, they did this. But we don't realize that we're the ones feeling the anger, and we will feel it until we decide to forgive it. And that may be never, depending on the level of anger and the justification for the anger. And so the ability for us to recognize that ultimately everyone is forgivable, because we are all just one event, one traumatic event, from becoming someone that we would also be very disappointed in.
I agree. I think that there's a bit in the Bible that says anger rots the bones, and when I got into healthcare, I understood that did nutrition, because when you get angry, what happens? Your acid levels go up, and guess what happens? You got to take calcium, potassium, magnesium, silica, all those things from the bones to get the pH levels back to normal. And I think that ultimately what anger does, it destroys you. My mother always used to say, before she died, she said, forgive others even if they don't ask for forgiveness. which was pretty amazing. So, listen, thank you. I really appreciate that. This is, like I said, this is I've been really excited about this. I've followed you for years. A great supporter of yours. And please, I'd love to keep in contact if there's anything that we
We're
can do.
TikTok friends now, I think, so we can.
Yeah,
When I venture onto there, then we absolutely, and I'll definitely share once this platform is
yeah,
ready.
please.
I think it's going to be very important for our industry.
I
So
agree. No, I really appreciate that, and I know that mine comes more probably from anatomy, biology, and everything else. Like I'm sure I've got some gifts, but that's not really. I'm more.
you're,
I like to help people. I'm an
you
enabler
know
of
what,
others.
this is what I would suggest is that you try,
Mm,
because unless we try, we don't know. And I think that that's what I want, is I don't want people to assume that this isn't going to be something they can do. I want them to check. But what the way we're doing it is it's completely without, there's going to be no shaming, no embarrassment, no
sure.
nothing. And so we don't know who can heal the way I do. We don't know, because you can stand in almost any room in the world and ask how many people have tried to heal people, and there's very rarely a show of, hands. It's a very low percentage. So my hope is that, or what is it? If you stand in a room of 90,000, you might get
Mm,
one. So, there's not a lot of people that have tried to work the way I work or within the constraints I do. And I hope that everyone tries, because if you can heal people, it's a very beautiful thing to be able to do for people.
totally. I think it's one of the. I mean, I remember Ingo Swann, who I don't even know Ingo Swann, but he was in charge of something that CIA did, some remote viewing. The first time they looked at remote viewing, there's a book that was called, I think it's called The Men Who Stare at Goats. And that was some incredible stuff that was done there with remote viewing. And they try to find the best of the best of the best. And I think it was, who was the peanut president? Carter, Jimmy Carter, when he said, what was the most remarkable thing about your presidency? And he said, the time they used those psychics to find those missing pilots that had gone down in a helicopter, but that kind of just went under the radar. But
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that's the kind of thing. Charlie, listen, thank you. I really appreciate it. And this is going to be going out very soon, and I'll be telling everybody, and so many people looking forward to this interview. So I'm hoping it's going to do some great things.
Right. Well, thank you for having me, and good to meet you, and for sure we'll stay in touch.
Take care. Bye
All
now.
right.